This screencast is to support the teaching of Straightforward Pre-Intermediate Lesson 8D. The full reference for this material is Straightforward Pre-Intermediate by C. Jones and P. Kerr, that's K-E-R-R, publisher Macmillan, publishing date 2005, so please reference any handouts that go to the students and put the reference on your plan also. You're going to need five different things for this. The student's page, which looks like this. The teacher's book notes are in two parts, so this is the first page and the second page looks like this, and you can see over here you've got the audio script. Okay, so if you choose to use the audio, the script is here in the teacher's book notes. There's some great notes about the grammar as well, really useful, and lots of other ideas, so please do fully read the teacher's book notes. They're very good for this particular lesson. And you've also got some information in the language reference, which would be at the back of the student's book down here on giving instructions. Pay attention here, it just gives after that and afterwards as sequencing adverbs. I think you'd need to give the students a lot more information on that. They find the word afterwards particularly tricky, so if you're teaching that part, recognise it needs more attention than this book gives it on paper. And the other thing you're going to need is the audio file. Okay, so let's get started and have a look at the first part of the lesson. If it's being taught by two people, say two 45-minute lessons, then I think it splits quite well if the first person does the material on the left-hand page, vocabulary and speaking and listening, and if the second person covers the grammar and then practice activating the grammar. Okay, so that's a good way to split it up over a 1.5 hour lesson. So the first part is a bit of speaking to get the students warmed up and into the topic. Okay, and the topic today is using the computer and giving instructions on the computer. So this speaking activity, number one, has some nice questions. Obviously, if you're teaching this class online, then you're going to need to adapt the questions a little bit. So, you know, what do you use your computer for? Well, it's probably for having this lesson that we're doing now. Ways of involving everybody might be to ask one student to ask another student the question. So if you number these questions, and then you could say, okay, Amir, can you ask question number 1 to another student? Ask Sumbal. Yeah, and you get Amir to ask Sumbal, at least that involves them both. And you could say, people listening, do you have any other questions for Sumbal about that? And that should keep everybody listening. So just to cover that again, maybe how often do you use the internet? So Ahmed, can you ask Sarah? And Ahmed asks Sarah, and then everybody else listens and then asks Sarah another question. Okay, just to save it being always through the teacher, try to make it go open pairs through the students. And then you want to move on to the vocabulary. There's some really useful vocabulary here in the blue box. A lot of it, of course, the students will know, but I imagine their pronunciation might not be very good, which would not be very helpful to them when they're listening to or giving instructions. And some of the words might be new. I think cursor, they might not have seen before. Maybe even undo, they know the symbol, but not know the word itself. Okay, so let's look a little bit more at that now. So remember we said that the students will probably know a lot of this vocabulary, therefore it's appropriate to use a test, teach, test lesson format. So find out what they know, cover the gaps, and then do some more practice. So that's what the book is trying to do. So exercise 1 asks them to match a picture to the word, testing what they already know. And then the teacher would come in the feedback from that task after number 1 and check meaning and drill the ones that you think are particularly difficult. And also I think it's important to check which ones are nouns, which ones are verbs. So make sure you're aware of that. I think there's only one noun in there, so it should be pretty straightforward. And then exercise 2 acts as a way of checking understanding. Okay, it's a gap fill. So ways of making this a bit more exciting. You could make some Quizlet slides with the pictures and the words on it, and then have a matching task. You could even use the matching function on Quizlet and time the students for how quickly they can tell you to match them together. That's quite fun. You can do it once and then do it again, see if they can beat their first time. Or you could have two teams. One team does it and then the next team does it, see who does it the fastest. You could make a set of correct and incorrect sentences here. Let the students watch, look at the sentences, and then they have to say which ones are correct or incorrect, and that could be done even in teams, or set the students into pairs and they would work together on that. Okay, so think about ways of trying to lift this off the page, basically. Okay, I mean, this is a listening part of the lesson. Remember, when you have a receptive skills lesson, you want to see different stages. So it's always worth checking to see if the book provides those. You want to raise interest in the topic and set the scene to activate schemata, get background knowledge activated. Then you want a simple first task for the listening, and then a more complex second task, and hopefully some kind of follow-up activity as well. Have we got it here? Okay. Well, there's no task to raise interest, but I think we can exploit this picture. You can show the picture and say what's happening here and elicit ideas from the students. Then exercise 1 here, listen to the dialogue and answer the questions. How much does the grandfather know? What does he want to do and does he succeed? That seems like a nice, simple first listening task. So that is there. And then is the second one more complex? Yeah, I think it is. They have to listen again and put the instructions in the correct order, maybe by writing numbers. Now, if I was in the face-to-face classroom, I'd probably blow these up and cut them up so that the students could manipulate them and move them into order. We can't do that in the online environment. But again, maybe a Quizlet where you put in the different items and then they have to put them into order, or a document where you can move the items around would help, I think, particularly for the feedback. And then number 3, just to round it off, a little bit of speaking. Is the order the same or different for your computer? Okay. So the listening has provided a context for this target language, giving instructions. Okay, the examples that you can use to clarify meaning, form, and pronunciation are all in the listening. Okay, so exploit that. Just be aware that on this page you've got some information about the grammar, you've got some practice and some further practice, but over here under Did You Know, there's some quite nice activity about talking about computer games. However, it doesn't really practice the target language. So I would suggest you focus on introducing the grammar and providing practice. And I would, as a teacher, I would leave this discussion on computer games for another day. So the main question is how to introduce the grammar. This book, Straightforward Pre-Intermediate, tends to just put the grammar in a box and then nothing else. So it's not very handy for the teacher. We need to find a way of making this box interactive, making it come alive so that we can elicit the rules from the students rather than just lecture them. So how could you do that? Well, lots of different ways, I guess. You can put up examples from the listening on a slide, maybe include some mistakes, and then you could say to the students, all these sentences come from the listening, but there are some mistakes here. Can you try to correct them? And then if they can correct them, that will give you an idea of how much they know about imperatives. And then I think you need to clarify the two different sorts. You type your address there and the imperative form, click on that button. Okay. Make sure they know that it could be rude depending on the intonation. So there's some pronunciation work to be done here. And make sure you really focus on the form. They might find that use of you a bit weird, understandably so. So make sure you're clear about that. And then the second part, first of all, then after that, next, I don't think students are going to have any problem with that apart from what I highlighted earlier, which is the difference between after that and afterwards. Okay, so I think instead of just putting those words up on the screen, then it needs an example sentence as well, just to really highlight the meaning. Other than that, you could put all of these words just jumbled up on the screen first of all, then after that, and ask the students, well, what order would these go in? That might be a way of just creating a bit of talk about that as well. Bit of pronunciation in there, maybe next, first of all, there's a week of in there. So fully analyse that language and give it the time it needs. Now we're at the stage where we want to activate this language. First of all, let's give them some slightly easier tasks and then make them freer in the hope that students will make mistakes so that we can help and correct them. So you've got exercise 2 here, which is acting, I think, as controlled practice, i.e. practice with only one correct answer, and they have to put the instructions into the correct order. Okay, that's quite nice. You could also have my old favourite, some correct and incorrect sentences, and they have to change them. Or something nice and fancy and exciting that you've thought of yourself there. Then number 3. It just looks a bit dense on the page. I do find it a bit tricky, and I'm not sure people really use thesauruses very much. If you like it, you think it's useful for your students, then you can stick with this as is. The teacher's book notes suggest things like telling each other how to make a cup of tea or a piece of toast, or how to change a tyre. And for people who are more computer literate as well, there are some other tasks there. So I really suggest looking at the teacher's book notes for this part of the lesson and thinking about what you would like the students to give instructions for. What might be useful for them? Maybe they give instruction to their children to do something. Maybe they want to instruct a friend on how to use a washing machine. Think about things that are useful to them and then scaffold that task. Don't set them off speaking straight away. It will help them if you scaffold it. And that would mean giving a demonstration, giving a model, giving them time to prepare, providing vocabulary that they can use, and then set them off to do their task once, and then hopefully repeat. All of those things will build fluency. So scaffolding the task and building in repetition can help a lot. I would suggest maybe doing a few in the whole group on the online version, and then putting the students into breakout rooms to share their instructions with each other. Okay, that will maximize the speaking time at this part. And while they're doing the speaking, you are listening and noting down examples of good language that you hear, examples of errors, perhaps creating a little Word document with those on as you go, as you're listening. Then at the end of the activity, focus on ideas first. So you can say, do you think other people understood your instructions? Could you make it any better? What do you think? Would I understand the instructions if you told me? And then focus on accuracy. So get up your Word document with the correct and incorrect sentences and say to the students, look at these sentences. Some are correct, some are not correct. Have a look and decide. Then give them time to look and think. They may start talking together, they may not, that's fine. And then stop and go through them as a class. Okay, and hopefully we've got the students with a little bit of new vocabulary, or certainly some improved pronunciation on the vocabulary. They've had some audio practice of listening. They've been introduced to some grammar, and they've had a lot of practice using that grammar in speaking. Sounds like a fun lesson. Okay, off you go.